Welcome back for the afternoon session, the live stream for E-mini Nasdaq 100 futures. We're having a scalping session today on a 30-second time chart. Okay, you may see at times I may switch down to the 15-second, but for the most part, we're going to try to remain on the 30-second chart and find some one-to-one scalps for 5-point take profit. Okay, I'm looking back just to see what happened during the lunch hour. Looks like we had a pretty sizable retracement down to 15,990. And then a buy up out of that. We're now up to 16,070. So from the price leg this morning, if you're looking at the bottom left-hand corner of the chart on the 5-minute, at 9:25, just before the opening bell, we had a low of 15,950, 15,946. Price bought out of that, retraced down to 50%. Gave us another bullish push, however, didn't make a new high. Retraced even further, breaking those lows, retracing down to 70% or 71% for everyone who's an optimal trade entry trader. Traded down into that sweet spot and then bought out of it at 12.15. So that's where we are. Most recently, we're looking at bullish momentum. So we will be looking for longs unless price tells us otherwise. And since we are looking for longs, first thing we want to identify is what was the last low that was broken. And I can see it from here. So it's right here. Let's clean up our charts a bit. Okay. So now all we see is that low that was taken. And now what we want to see is we want to see a new high. So let me find our tools from the morning session, bring those over just so they're ready. Okay, now that we have our tools set up or over in the area, now we can continue looking for long setups as soon as the high is broken. So when we do get a new high, then we're going to mark up the manipulation, which would be the movement downwards. And we're going to look for a retracement into 30%. But we have our Fibonacci marked up at 30%, 50%, and 70%. The entry that you choose will depend on your risk tolerance. And also for me, it depends on how large the range is. A larger range requires me to shift my entry down to the 50% as opposed to a more aggressive entry at 30%. Yeah. But one thing I would like to see is for price to break out of this consolidation range prior to an entry. So once we get a break of the high, let's hope that it pulls up pretty high. And then when we put in our Fibonacci for the retracement, oops, put that in the right way. All right. So entry will be at the top of this range. But what I would like to see really is for the entry to be closer to this area, so it could tap in and get out. I don't really want to see it have to get back in the thick of this area just to tap in the trade, because what can happen is it can end up being pulled to the bottom of the range, which is what you see a lot of times in consolidation, and being pulled to the bottom of the range for such a small scalp of just a 5-point stop loss. You can see it's pulled to the bottom of the range, you end up being stopped out. And I'd rather not happen. So as I'm looking for a setup, that's usually how I decide whether I want to take the 30% entry or I want to take a deeper retracement, 50%, and risk it not retracing far enough and me not getting into the trade. Alrighty. So that new high was put in. The time we were looking, I believe we were here. All right, so it looks like I completely missed that while I was explaining, and as we were getting started. Right? So the new high was actually after the low was broken. The move up took out this high, right, by one tick maybe. That's why I need to make sure my range is large enough so I can see that variance. Took it by one tick, retraced into the 30% zone, activated the trade, and maybe 4 candles later, we had a winning trade. Traded back in, tapped in anyone who wanted a 70% entry. I'm sorry, 50% entry, and delivered a winning trade as well for that one. It's still in the zone. Me personally, I would only take the trade once. If I see the trade deliver, I don't like to re-enter or to enter on the second one if I missed it. But it's just tapped into 30% entry again, just in case someone wanted that. Let's see if we can have a race up to 16,071. Okay, it delivered again for a third time. Okay, let's clean up our charts. Now it's moving out of the zone. Okay, it's made a new high. It also cleared a low. So we technically have another setup from this low to this high. Price is already tapped in. $65. Okay, all right. Good job, Chris. Way to go. Okay, we've seen this swing high eclipse on this side. If I was in the trade, my stop loss would be at break even, just so it wouldn't peel back on me and then turn into a losing trade after delivering 80% of it already. If you don't like break even because that's too conservative and likely end your trade, you can place your stop just below the swing low. So basically moving it up 1 point. So you're reducing your risk now down to 4 points instead of 5. And then you wait to see if price delivers the profit. $46.05. Okay. Let's see where ES is. Yeah, it did reject out of there. That's true. Okay. There's TP delivered for anyone entering at 30% or 50%. All right, clean up again. Okay, still looking for a low to be taken for another setup. Bounce down to the 15 seconds, see if we had a low taken in the same area. And we did get a low taken from this spot with a new high sought. Okay. Not quite the entry yet. Almost there. Okay, there's a tap into a long. Somebody wanted 30% entry. Also, 50% has been tapped in. Okay, 30% was a losing trade. 50% is still in play. 70% is tapped in. 50% is a losing trade. So when it's not a winning trade, it's not that I have an expectation of like price to reverse or anything. That's when you wanna sit back and see what price does next. What we want to see is we saw it take out this low. So now the question is, will price seek lower prices? Then we can change our bias to being bearish and we can look for shorts, or is that just a liquidity sweep? And then we see price resume bullish prices. So now we're kind of in a wait and see pattern. Now that price didn't deliver on any of the time frames, or I'm sorry, any of the retracement levels, it just ended the 70% trade there. So what we want to do, let's move this out of the way and let's sit back and let's reevaluate. So if we look at what price action was doing and what was the key level, we have lows here in this area, and then we have a low here. So once we took out this low down here is where we start looking potentially for lower prices. It doesn't mean that it necessarily happens, because a lot of times you'll get this move and then you'll get it back, moving back upwards. So we just want to see what happens next. But let's say we were looking for lower prices, then we'd be looking for a high to be swept. So we have to ask ourselves, has a high been swept? And it has not so far. And this is the 15 seconds. So this is not even looking on the 30. On the 30-second, we wouldn't have had a high swept yet. Or on the 15, sorry. I'll go back to the 15. Okay, so now let's see what price does next. Do we seek lower prices? Or do we resume? And this is more or less just a liquidity grab. almost. Okay, we just had our first high taken. Okay, so now that we had a high taken, now we wanted to see, will lower prices be sought, which would then align us up for a short. If that's not the case, and we see these levels reclaimed, then we're still in line for, excuse me, for longs. We're still looking for longs. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't like to take too many trades in the same area. So we had a trade here that was a winner. We had a trade here that was a winner. We had a trade here that lost. But all of these are in the same area. So um, for my for the way I like to trade and for my risk tolerance, I would wait for price to move out of this entire zone, even if it showed me a setup. Right? Because let me move up to the 30 seconds so we get fewer candles. Okay. Because like if you look at what was happening on the move up, you had lows giving people areas to place their stop loss that was protected all the way up the chain. So at some point, you are going to have a raid on those stop losses. The market is going to want to come and collect that, going to want to and start collecting. So it took out one, two, not quite the third one, but it did take two of them out and remove them from the market. So anyone who got in late and wanted a tight stop loss, the bullish move, that it's not favorable for them. So they lost their trade. Um, and that's another reason why when you find too many trades in the same area, and that typically happens when you have like a retracement and then you have a new high made, but it's only made by a couple ticks, maybe 1 point at the most, right? When that happens, then you know the retracement back is coming back into the zone. So it's going to be pretty much an exact setup that you had just before with just a few ticks difference. So Chris, I hope that helped. Okay, let's remove this. Remove this as well. And now we're waiting for this price to be eclipsed and for price to start trading in a different area. Right, so with the shift we had coming down, was eclipsed here. So that's why we're kind of in that in between. Just flip flopping back and forth in a small area. So we just want to wait. Okay, we have higher prices now. So again, that's why we didn't want to jump in and start taking shorts, just because some lows have been swept or because we lost our trade. We wanted to let price settle and show us what it wanted to do. And even now, we have it breaking this high. But what we want to see is we want to see a candle body close above this high. Because all it did now is trade right back into the same zone that we previously took trades that we don't want to trade in anymore. Okay, we've had another market structure shift. Let's see. On this big range, if you took a more macro look at price, you had a low swept over here on the move down, and then you had a new high put in. So anyone who would have wanted this, since this range is so large, there's no way I would have taken this prior to the 50%. But even then, I'm not even sure that would have produced a winner. Oh, it would have. But even here, you can see if you take the entry at 50%, the 5-point stop loss is just a hair below 70%. That's why taking this at 30% is such a risky play. Because just below 50% would have been the stop out. So all right, just past 130, and price is still in this consolidation zone. So again, we're not seeking trades in this area. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm not seeking trades in this area. According to your risk assessment, your risk analysis, you are free to do whatever you feel. It's the moment where price will put a candle body above. Move this out of the way. Going to step away for just a moment while we wait for price to eclipse one of these extremes, whether it takes out the high or the low. I'll be right back. Yeah, you see price rejected back into the zone, still there. Okay, we have a short that just worked as a profitable trade. Not that we're switching our bias, but we just want to be aware of it. Let's see how price continues to develop and see if we get lower prices. Okay, we want to continue to monitor price just until it breaks out and starts to show us that it's in a new trending direction. For now, what we have is pretty much made a high, then it came down, made a sizable retracement, made a new high, sizable retracement, and now it's racing for the upper level again. So as you can see, this is not really trending price or what we look for in our scalping trade setup. So we just want to sit on our hands. It's 1:45, so in 15 minutes it'll be 2 o'clock, when sometimes price likes to change directions at 2 o'clock, or at least start trending. So we may have another 15 minutes before things actually start to show itself. Take a peek at the 15 second and see if it's any clearer than the 30. Not really. There are no lows taken. It's a good sign. Okay, we've now put in a new high. Let's see where the candle closes at. Will we now get higher prices? Okay. See where we are now that we have made another high. We still haven't closed above the previous high made, or have we? Let's see. Yeah, we have. Okay, by a couple ticks, we did. Excuse me. It's slightly out of the range that we was in earlier. Um, Not really enough for my liking, but it is out of that zone, so it's a different trade. Okay, it's 2 o'clock now. Let's see if price action changes and we get a little bit more volatility. The last hour didn't provide much, but let's just also keep in mind this is Friday afternoon. It's also so it's the end of the week. So if the weekly objectives have been met, we may not see a lot from price action this afternoon. Also, this was NFP week. NFP was announced this morning. All the non-farm payroll changes, unemployment, those kind of things. So we had lots of volatility at 8:30 and 10 o'clock. We also had the 9:30 opening bell. So this morning's activity was pretty good. Um, but it wouldn't be surprising for this afternoon to be a little slow, a lot of consolidation, and maybe not a large range. But we'll wait and see. It's still showing it's been bullish ever since lunch hour. Even if you look down to the lower left-hand corner on the 5 minute, the last half hour or so, we didn't get a lot of movement from price. But if you look down at the long term, or at least from lunch on that 5 minute chart, you can see that there wasn't any violation to that long-term trend or to that bullish trend. And so for that reason, we never switched over to a bearish bias. We just moved over to the sideline and watched price a little longer before deciding what we wanted to do. And even now, it's still sort of consolidating. It's still not doing a lot, but it's 2 o'clock, so we do have an expectation that things could change this hour. Okay, there's price delivery for anyone who was interested in taking a 30% retracement trade. Anyone interested in taking a 50% retracement trade also? Let's see what that looked like. The same candle delivered to both. If you were really conservative and wanted a 70% retracement entry, okay, delivered that one as well. Barely got it. So if you were looking for any more than like 3 or 4 contracts, you may not have got them all filled, but you at least would have got 2 or 3 of them, up to 4, and the next candle delivered. So all retracement levels delivered. Okay. For anyone who didn't catch that, let me walk you through that trade, what that setup looked like. Okay. Right. So we have this bullish momentum, which we in this area have been kind of seeing highs and lows taken. So you had it flipping back and forth, back and forth. But I think we were solid on our bullish bias here once we saw it take over here. Okay. From there, we waited for a low to be taken. So we had a low created, swing low. We also had swing lows here. Swept down 2-3 times. So we didn't have to worry about a low being taken. But we were looking for a high to be taken after that as our final step. This was our down in this area when it was sweeping lows. The high was here. So then we just waited for price to take over and eclipse that high, which it did on this candle. Once that happened, then we grab our Fibonacci tool, and this became our manipulation area. And then what we look for is for a retracement into 30%. So we set up our long tool, put it on 30%. Okay. After the high was broken. So first we needed the high to be broken. Then we set up our long tool. It broke it here. Immediately retraced back into the 30%. So it entered us into the trade. Sat around equilibrium for several candles and finally broke out to the upside, delivering the take profit for anyone who was in that trade. Anyone who missed it and wanted to get in afterwards, it gave you several opportunities. This was, let's see, 1 candle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and one more, this candle. Actually, the one that delivered the profit came in one more time, tapped in, and then delivered. So there was, on the 30-second chart, there was 8 opportunities to get into that one trade. Let's get rid of some of these lines, make sure our chart is clean so we can clearly see our candles. Move the long tool. Carry on and continue looking. One thing we notice is we already had a low swept after this price was delivered. So this was the exit of our trade. Well, I'm sorry, no. This was the validation of the last trade. Traded in, traded out of. But in that process, there was a low swept. There was a new high created here, which swept this high. So in that case, this is our manipulation. Long tool. Got within one tick and retrace all the way back through the entrance. Yep. So when you had this swing high here taken, that's when you would have wanted to put your stop loss below this swing low, which would have been right here at 160825. That trade would still be open now. You'd just be risking 3/4 of a point, not even a point risk anymore. For anyone entering over here, you would have had the same. You would have wanted to put your stop loss here below this swing low, which you also would have risked maybe a point. Still targeting the 5.25 points to the end of this zone at 16,091 3/4. And there's the delivery. So let's now move the long tool. All right, new high placed. And we carry on at a low swept, new high made. Okay, price is overtaking this swing high. Keep that in mind with this swing low here, the double bottoms. Okay, there's the delivery. If you had more than 4 contracts, okay, well now even if you had more than 4 contracts, it's still delivered. So that's the third one in a row. So we had this one, second one, third one, all within 10, 12 point range. For me, I would step on the sideline until price moved out of this range now. I would be happy with 3 victories. Hell, 3 victories in a session or in a day is enough. But if you wanted to continue trading after 3, I would probably step on the sideline and wait for price to move to a different area because it's only a matter of time before you get a fake out. But anyone in the chat, are there any questions on the strategy? We just had 3 deliver in a row. Do you want me to mark those up again for anyone who just joined or may not have caught what we were trying to do? Also, if you're watching and you're enjoying what you see, or you want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel so you can get invitations to all the live streams. I had a target early in the week to get 20 new subscribers this week. Currently at 15. I need 5 more subscribers. Hopefully during this live stream this afternoon, there'll be 5 new viewers who will want to stick with us going forward, and they'll subscribe to the channel. Okay, it's good to see price leaving the area and starting to make a mark somewhere else, so we can continue looking for setups. Let me move the long tool out of the way. Remove this line. We don't need that anymore. So as we continue to look for longs, what we need as our first step, well, the first step is always done. If we're continuing in the same direction, the first step is to make a new high, which it's clearly done right here. You'll see that. So now we need a low to be taken. We need a low swept. And so far we have not had one, I don't believe. No, we haven't. Let's shift down to the 15-second and see if we had any more activity, that maybe we will see a low that was swept and we can look for another setup on this time frame. That's low here is 16092.75 and 16092.75. So we had equal lows. All right, here we go. We have a low swept now. Actually, no, we haven't. I thought I would have found an equal low, or sorry, a swing low here, but there isn't a swing low. The last swing low is this one. Okay, looks like we got a rejection here. There's our closest swing low. Okay, now our closest swing low is here. Okay, step 2 is done. Okay, now that we had several lows broken, let's wait for this high to be taken. We need this high to be taken before we get into a new trade. Good observation, Chris. Very good observation. Yeah, Chris, one thing I've noticed, or one thing I've heard other traders talk about, is this scalping model works on any time frame. It works any time of day. The Asia session is a little slow, so to get 5 points would take some time. A lot of times it's moving really slow, so some people like to um, reduce their target to 3 points. So you have a 3 point stop loss and a 3 point take profit. But you can use this any time of day. So what happens is you can have several strategies that you trade, but some strategies are more likely to occur during certain times. Like there may be a strategy that you use that you only can use between the hours of 10 and 11 in the morning, or it needs the opening bell of New York um, in order for that strategy to be used. So those kind of strategies are so time sensitive that your schedule really needs to permit for that. Whereas this is whenever you get some free time and you have an hour to sit down at the charts, you can quickly take a trade. And so that's what a lot of traders are doing is they're having different strategies for different times of day. Yeah. Yeah. This strategy, the scalping strategy, this is for people who struggle with patience. Also, those who struggle with holding a trade for an hour or two sometimes, because you predefine when you're going to exit, what your take profit is, and in a lot of cases, 1, 2, 3 minutes later, you're done. And if you leverage up to 4 or 5 contracts in a trade, it turns out you have the same risk, but you have also the same take profit that you would have had if you took one contract, but you had a 20 point stop loss. Okay, we've seen price now deliver a new high after sweeping multiple lows. The latest low swept was, looks like these equal lows. Yep, nope, take that back. We had one down here that was swept. So it went all the way down, cleaning up that. Let's see. All right, we made a new high. Let's now look at this manipulation and see what the trade would be. It's a pretty large zone, so it's not one that I feel comfortable taking. Um, Not that I won't take them, but it's not. I'm not as comfortable as I am in some of the other ones, so that's why I like to move down to 50% on these. Um, but I'll start out at 30 for anyone who likes the 30%. Okay. Anyone liking 30% are already tapped in. The only thing that's not great about this trade is the fact that this high was made on a rejection candle. It traded down considerably, taking out a lot of lows. It bought back up and only put a wick through this high. It didn't forcefully break through and declare that it wants to continue bullish momentum. However, it following the mechanics of this strategy, we did have a high, low swept, and a new high. So for that reason, um, I put the trade up here so you can see what it looks like. 50% is also tagged in. 30%. Okay, 30% entries are very near to the stop loss. Right. So anyone waiting for 70%? So far, they have not gotten an entry. 30% was right around break even. 50% was close to TP. Right. So this swing high was taken. So I would suggest moving stop losses here. That's what I would have done. Therefore, as a 2-point stop loss now. Okay. If you were entering on a 30%, moving it up really didn't provide a lot for you. So it was only like 2 ticks that you would have moved your stop loss up. It's the 50%ers who saved quite a bit. Okay. So if you got in at 50%, you're probably out now. Yep. So 50%ers won their trade. 30%ers still in. Now, if you're 30% entrance, you can move your stop loss to here. So now you have less than a 2-point stop loss. That's an encouraging candle. Okay, so anyone moving their stop loss as I would had on 30% entry would have been tapped out right there at just under two handle stop loss. So instead of $40, I think it would have been $35. So it would have been a $35 loss on that one as opposed to 100. But if I extend it back out to where it was, let's see, for anyone who didn't move their stop loss but entered at 30%, let's see where this trade ends up. Back over to the 30-second. Okay, so that 30% retracement entry would have been a losing entry. Question is just where would you have placed your stop loss? If you left it where it was, you lost all 5 points. If you made any of the shifts as price was moving upwards, you lost less. Anywhere in this area, you could have also pulled your stop loss to break even, especially when it made this move here above this purple line. It delivered basically 85% of the full trade. I would have pulled my stop to all the way to break even. So I would have ended up with a loss of 0, but a gain of 0. And for anyone that was a 70% trader, let's say you're ultra conservative, but you still believe in longs at this stage, you would have got tapped in there and you would have been out of your trade already. Okay, but the majority of our trades are taken out of 30%, so let's leave it there. Let's clean up our chart and let's continue to monitor price and see if we get another setup soon. I mean, we do want to wait for price to break out of this box here. So as long as price sits in this box, we'll sit on the sideline. And again, we don't want to see wicks. We want to see candle bodies outside, and we want to see price push forward, push upwards. We did get a low broken at an extreme level, but I mean, we had a low broken here as well. Okay. I wouldn't take this trade just because it'll to activate, it needs to trade back into this zone, which we're not looking to do. So I wouldn't take this trade. However, as far as breaking a low, we have this one. And then we had a new high made, which is why I marked it up. It's been a little quiet this afternoon, so I wonder if most traders are already done for the week. Plus, around the world, it's late Friday evening if you're in Europe now, or even east of Europe. So maybe we'll stop at 3 o'clock today. Unless you guys want to continue until 4, I'll check with you at 3, and then you just let me know if you want me to continue or if you're ready for your weekend. Okay. What we see in this small area, we took out a low. This was our high before, and then we made a new high just now. There, Fibonacci on the range, extension tool. In this case, the range is so small, it can trade completely out of the low and still only be in half of the stop loss area. These setups are ideal just because of risk. Um, to come all the way out of to give you a stop loss and end up down here somewhere. Um, is less likely than it would be if the range was larger. Right? Because the way this strategy works is because this low was swept and created a new low, once it goes for a new high, you expect this low to hold. And that's why this small range is ideal for this type of scalping setup. You expect then for this high to be eclipsed. Once the high is eclipsed, then potentially this low could be next. Right? Major high. Then you get to decide what you do with the low, whether you move it to the swing low there, reduce your risk. That was only a 2.25 point risk, or you leave it at 5 points and you just hold until it either stops you out or delivers your take profit. Another delivery? Chris, I don't know if you caught that one. Not. Oh, okay. You got to leave in 10. Okay. No problem, Chris. So there's another delivery, another winner. And a breakout of the area, which is what we were hoping to see. Oops. Boom. Sweet. Yeah, I really do like these small tight zones here. Just gives you a lot of wiggle room on your stop loss. We don't need this any longer. All right, I think on this session we are, wait a minute, 3-1, 3-1. This is either 7 wins and 2 losses or 8 wins and 2 losses, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, we had these 3 deliver. Then there was a loss. Then we did it again. We had 3 in a row deliver. Then a loss. This one delivered at 50%, which I called 50% before the trade started. And then this one just delivered. Okay, so we're at 8 wins against 2 losses. And even if you want to consider this a loss, that's fine. We'll consider 7 wins and 3 losses. That's still a plus 4R for the session. I think 4 winning trades, whether you take 1 contract or 5 contracts, it's still something that you can build a living off of. Top Step allows you to connect 3 accounts together. So even if you were taking 1 contract, 4 wins times, if you had 3 accounts, 3 $50,000 accounts, that would be 12. That'll be $1,200 on the day. And that's on the 7 win, 3 loss scenario. If you considered it 8 wins and 2 losses, then you're talking about 6 wins and times 3. So you're talking about $1,800. So you don't need a lot on this strategy. There's not a lot of, you don't need a lot of, you don't need to use a lot of contracts. You don't need to risk a lot of money, but you can make a living wage doing these small scalps. And we've been on now for almost 2 hours. It's Friday afternoon. You could close your laptop and start your weekend with just the activity that we've seen in the last 2 hours. Not to mention the morning session. Not to mention there's a London session if anyone's up that early. An Asian session if you can only trade after your day job. Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I have the same thing. Too eager to get out as soon as you find a winner because you can always remember. It's like the losers you can't get out of your memory. And so when you're winning a trade, the one thing you want to do is secure profit so you know you won it. And that was also an issue for me. That's why the scalping model, it fits my personality a little better because I'm only looking for 5 points. Now, when we were in this trade, or not we were in the trade, but when we were looking at this trade, I mean, that was probably one of the longest ones I've seen on a 30-second time frame. And that took 10 minutes, I think, all the way to the end. So it was 20 candles or so. But for the most part, it's 3-4 minutes and you already know the results of your trade. Invest outdoors. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining. I hope to see you again in the future. Hopefully you're subscribed. If not, still welcome. Good to have you. And do you have any questions? If you have any questions, throw it in the chat. Okay, it looks like we're still bullish. So what I want to do is I want to Look and see if there's another setup, but the only way to find that is we need a low to be swept. So we're looking for lows, and there wasn't any on this price leg since the last trade. So let's drop down to the 15-second. Okay. Dropping down to the 15-second gives us, not quite. This one. Okay, equal lows there. Okay, here we go. We got one at the top, which is great because I really don't want to retrace back down to this zone that we just saw winning trade in. So we now have a low that swept here. Now we want to see this high taken out. Have a great weekend, Chris. Thanks for joining. Good to have you this week. It's been good talking to you and trading. Talk to you next week. Okay, we're approaching a new high. All right, so this is our new zone. This low to this high, which was the previous high. The manipulation down. Grab our long tool. Set it up at 30%. Okay, price is already tapped in. Anyone looking for 30% trade is already in. Currently in profit. Anyone who missed it is now in. Getting close to a new high. New high has been made. Stop loss under the swing low. See if it can run the profit. Okay. Anyone who moved their stop got stopped out. The other entries, 50%. Got, wow, 2 or 3 ticks away from TP. Anyone entering at 70%? They TP'd out twice, 2 different times. No, I take that back, only once. Tapped in, 3 candles later, it was out. Okay, let's extend. Shift back up. 30%. Yeah, I'll be right back. Okay. Okay. One thing we should be aware of, and I'm just looking at the higher time frames now as we get towards the end of Friday. So it's the end of the day, end of the week. We are at the extreme high of that time period. So let's just be aware that price may not want to continue to make highs as we move closer and closer to the closing bell. It does like to usually put in a wick, a top wick, which means we'll be looking for lower prices from now until the closing bell. And we just saw everyone who entered at 30% and didn't move their stop loss. They did lose this trade. The 50% entries haven't lost, but it's at the lower end. Now they are out. And the 70%, they already won their trade. Right? And we saw that earlier. So I'm going to move this over. Let's get rid of some of these lines. Come back and take a look. And like I said, just be aware that price is at the very extreme top end of the range. Now it could want to buy all the way to the end of the closing bell and just end on a high note for the week, and that could be. There's a long wick underneath the body for on the weekly candle. We have not taken out last week's high, so that could still be in play, even though it's it's a good deal away from where we are right now. All right, so we'd be looking for like another 100 points up, which it can absolutely do that within an hour. It's just whether that's the target and that's what it wants to do. If it does, then we'll see price run for this last hour. If not, we'll see price just remain in the range and maybe sell off a little bit and close at 4 o'clock. Okay, anyone new to the channel who's enjoying the scalping strategy and would like to join in future live streams from me, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get invited. YouTube will send you out a link and a reminder every time that I'm live. Once the live stream jumps on, it'll also send you another reminder just in case you forgot. If you're liking the content, make sure that you give me the thumbs up. That'll help promote the video to other people searching for live streaming or searching for live trading or Nasdaq futures or anything related to this channel and related to this live stream. So I would appreciate if you could like and give me a subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I haven't checked to see if I reached my goal or not, but I was hoping to get 20 new subscribers this week. I've so far gotten 15. Let's see if maybe during this live stream another 5 joined and appreciate the content and want to continue watching. Okay, we have had lows taken. I don't know if this was equal lows, relative equal lows. We'll now see if price wants to continue bullish and put in higher prices. Okay, traded back in between those two zones after taking out the low. Let's see if it can now take out the high and resume printing higher prices. Because of what I said earlier, I'm not expecting it to print higher prices, but based on what I see, I want it to print higher prices. If we get a sharp move downwards, then we'll move over to bearish sentiment, and I will no longer look for higher prices. But as long as it's continuing to look bullish, I'd rather it not consolidate for the last hour. Okay, it's 3 o'clock now. Anyone who wants to stay on, I'm willing to stay on for another hour. Jump in the chat and let me know that you are going to continue watching, and I'll stay on for another hour. Otherwise, if I don't hear from anyone, I'll assume that those who are still in the chat don't really mind if I close it, and I'll end it and we'll start our weekend and come back next week. Okay, we've had another low taken. So we're definitely in this at this moment bullish. I'm sorry, bearish. We are bearish after this low has been taken. However, we want to make sure that we continue to monitor price so that these highs aren't reclaimed. And for that reason, we won't take a trade right now. We won't even mark up a setup until we have further confirmation that price wants to continue moving south. So we want to see a new low put in either before or okay, too late now. A new low's been put in. But remember, for the setup, we also need a high swept. So it's good that we have a high right here. We can get both of those done in this same zone. Let's go down to the 15-second. Okay, what we see on the 15-second actually is, so we had a swing low here that we saw equaled on this side. So when we broke the swing here, right here, this actually pointed us towards being bearish to start looking for potentially price moving down, right? Then we had it come down and it equaled the swing low on this side. It bought up, created a high right here that then it swept. So we had a sweep of a high, and then this low was then swept here. So on the 15-second, we actually had several opportunities to identify bearish momentum and potentially look for a setup. Yep, so in this case, this is what it would look like. Okay. And there was no return to 30%, so there was no trade. Got a high placed here. Has not been swept yet. And then we had a new low. Okay. So we wait and continue to monitor for a swing high to be taken. And until we get a swing high broken, then we can't move on to the next step. Here's our short tool. Just move that over. Okay, we have a high taken now. Now we want to see the low continue. All right, Brett. Brett, do you have any questions? Since you're the only one to speak out, let me know if there's something you want to see in particular, and I'll let you know. I'll try to walk you through some of the previous trades we had, or I'll just stay on and for a little while, and we just continue to monitor and look for future setups. Okay. Okay, let's see if price breaks down now. It's now 10 after 3. We know the macro runs from 3:15 to 3:45. So we want to be aware of that. Okay, as we look down to the bottom left and we see the 5-minute chart, you see we swept through the fair value gap, but didn't close below. We're actually above it now and just closed. Let's see where we are on the retracement of this last leg. Okay, we just went down to 50%, which we know price likes to retrace to 50% for balance. So right now, price could actually do either. It could continue moving down, or it could return to becoming bullish and seek higher prices for the last hour. So in that case, what we want to do is to just wait and see what happens, and see which one of those purple lines gets crossed first, excluding this one. All right, let's go back to the 30-second. Yeah, for the most part, it is just watching price action off of retracements. You're looking for a false move in the opposite direction. Then you're looking for price continuation, retracement of 30%. And then you're looking for it to continue in the trending direction. So you're right, it is pretty straightforward. Okay, just a couple minutes before 3:15. Alrighty, what is price going to do? It's doing this number. It has to break out eventually. All right, 315 now. Let's see. Where does price want to go? Okay, that was aggressive. The last second of the candle. Get a 30-second short. Thing is, we had on a 30 seconds, so we had a low put in down here, right? And from there was a high put in. Actually, there was a high put in here, which was swept up here. But even all the highs or all the lows that are being swept, we still need this low to be taken. So we need a new low put in before we have our next setup. Because there was never a market structure shift back to being bullish. Now, if we shift down to the 15-second, there may have been a market structure shift, right? So you could say above here, switch back bullish. Then when we made this high, that then made this the low, right? Which was eclipsed over here. And in that case, let's see. We do have a high taken here. So, but we would still need to see a new low put in. So we would be looking for, once this low is taken, then potentially we could take this manipulation and it could trade into 30% and back down. But that's one of the reasons why I don't use the 15-second as the primary time frame. It's because it's too easy for market structure shifts to occur, and you just end up going back and forth, back and forth. And so I like to stick to one direction, and I use the 5-minute sort of as a barometer for whether we're in a long-term shift or if it's just a market structure shift that's going for a liquidity sweep and then it's coming back. But anyway, Brett, that was actually pretty good. 16.14 and a quarter. Yeah, on the 30-second, it was pretty far, I'm looking, because what we had was, if we start back from the top when we were up here, right, everything was bullish. We had made a new high, which then made this our new key low. No, take that back. This would have been our swing low here, which we had torn through here. Once that happened, that made this the swing high we were looking for. And because this was the swing high that created this low, all this movement inside is still part of this leg down, which is bearish. Okay, it's now 3:30, 30 minutes before the market closes. So far, it hasn't really given us much since 3 o'clock, which is right when this high was put in. Wonder if that was on purpose. All right, but if I switch back over to the 15-second, let's just look and see if there's something that we want to look at. All right, so potentially, let's say it's on the move down. We had a low placed here, small retracement, new low place. So this would have been our key high, which was swept out, which gave us then bullish sentiment again. Then we have a low here taken on this side. Okay, let's see. Did we get a new high? That's the question. This one. This was the highest closing candle. So this would have been the wick to use. We then had a new high place. Okay, let's put this over on our 30%. Drag it over. Clean up the charts a bit so we know what we're looking at. And this is where we are on the 15-second. So the 15-second will give you many more entries that the 30-second will not. For me, it just moves a little too fast, and it changes directions equally as fast. And so I prefer the 30-second, but either works. You can use this on any time frame. If you want it really slow and you want to have longer to make a decision, you can use the 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, it doesn't matter. It's just you'll want to make sure that you back test so you understand that time frame, what type of stop loss and take profit is feasible for a 70% win rate. For 30 seconds, the five point stop loss, 5 point take profit seems to work well. I would imagine once you start getting into the 1, 2, and 3 minute, you probably want to extend it to 8 points, maybe 10. I haven't back tested, so I'm not sure. Yeah, sounds good, Brett. It took me, I probably back tested. I did 3 or 4 hour sessions for 5 or 6 days, and then I started to feel comfortable taking the setups. Started to feel comfortable identifying them. Um, it really helped out quite a bit for me by back testing. And the weekend, when you're eager to trade and you just want to get on the charts, back testing is a good practice to do on the weekend as you're looking forward to the following week and it's trying to gain momentum and confidence in your trading. Yeah, for the most part, I only do NQ. I will trade S&P sometimes. It's just a little slower, so I prefer the Nasdaq. Um, I haven't traded Dow in quite some time, but I mostly focus on indices. Forex, from what I understand, this also works on Forex. I don't trade it, so I don't understand the increments and how much a trade is worth on, like, you know, EU, USD or those kind of things. But I've seen traders use this model on those indices. I'm sorry, on Forex as well as crypto. But I learned trading from ICT. I've been following him for the last 2 years. And so that's kind of how I got hooked on indices. And I just want to master just a couple pairs. I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I just want to master a few. And so I got stuck on the indices and I haven't moved. Yeah, me neither. I have some crypto as far as a portfolio is concerned, but I'm not one who looks at the crypto charts every day looking to trade. Okay, let's slide this long tool down to 50% just in case someone was conservative and they only like to enter at 50%. They would have had 1 point, 1 tick of drawdown and immediately ran to profit. Yep. Shift it back up to anyone entering at 30%. Let's see where we would be. Okay, 30%. You're probably halfway there now. Probably worth considering whether you want to pull your stop loss up to this area. Yeah, 50%. Okay, let's go back to 30. Did it deliver? See if we can end the week on a high note. Not yet, not quite. There it is. 30% delivered as well. Did, nope, 70. There was no entry for 70. All right, let's go to 30-second and see if that would have given us an entry or not. Well, actually, we already know the 30-second would not have because we wouldn't have noticed market structure shift on the 30-second. It was only on the 15-second that we had a market structure shift. So sometimes when I'm on a 30-second, it seems like nothing's happening. I will jump over to the 15 just to see if there was a high or low taken or something, part of some of the steps in the setup uh, where I can take a trade off the 15. But for the most part, I really like sitting on the 30-second and just waiting for things to happen there and not forcing it. And a large part of that is because that's the time frame that I back test, so that's the time frame that I'm comfortable with. Okay, let's put that stop back down at 5 points. Okay, looks like price wants to end the day at on its high. It's continuously putting in a new high for the week. Yep, on the 30-second. Absolutely. On the 30-second, that's what I'm waiting for. Now we're bullish. We're bullish again. Yep, I was here. Now that price has swept. Then I would go back. I would say, okay, we're at a high now. And I would then look and try to find a low that was swept. Or actually, I would expect a low to be swept now. So I'm looking for price to create one. Because the last swing low that we have is down here. So price could retrace for 10 points down here and then resume, but I would prefer it to maybe make a swing low here and then take that and then move. Because I don't know how long you've been on the feed, but earlier we had several trades as price was inching upwards between like 2 and 230 and also between 1 and 130. So what happens is you take a trade and like this one, you win. But as you can see, if we needed this low to be swept, we have to get back down into this area where the last trade took place. And so I don't like for trades to develop in the same area as a previous trade that we just took. Likewise, if it traded into the zone and then it trades out and delivers for us, if it trades back in, I won't take the second entry, even though sometimes it'll deliver. But me, just my discipline and the rules that I have is I take a trade once. If it delivers, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too, but I won't take it a second time. And so when I'm looking for a future trade, I really hate it when they develop in the exact same area as the previous one. Okay, so if this is going to be the low that swept, let's hope it's only swept by 1 or 2 ticks. So this becomes the low of the manipulation leg. It races for a new high. And then we end up putting a Fibonacci, something like this. So then the next entry is up here at 30%. If we get a full retracement all the way down and then it races for a new high, like let's say it sweeps this low and then runs for a new high, now our 30% entry is here. So it's not exactly down here, but it's getting closer. If it sweeps even further, now the range is so large that I only want to get in at 50%. And then I'm basically back at the exact same area we got in last time. So where it is right now, I don't want to see it get any lower than that if I'm going to take that setup. Because I hate large ranges and I hate to play the same range twice. Maybe we want to see it now return to the top of the range. I know it's 345, so it's possibly wishful thinking, but for our trade setup, that's what we want to see. Mm, Not really optimistic now that we get a new high. If price wants to close above these gaps in price action. Yep, 10-4, 10-4. Algorithm's going to run its macro now to close out the day. Um, so anyone out there looking for a setup, I probably wouldn't take a trade. We can still monitor price action for a few more minutes, but as far as actively trading and putting money on the table, I wouldn't do that. All right, maybe now it's finally building a wick on that on that weekly candle. Also a top wick on the daily candle as well. Okay, I was just getting ready to mark up that low to see if that low was going to hold, and clearly it didn't hold. Let me just move this over. In fact, we can get rid of it. We're not looking for any setups. I do want to thank everyone for joining today. Anyone still on now, thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to show you the 30-second scalping model. I don't think I'm that entertaining. I'll try to get better at that. The more I do these things, the better I will get probably. But I do want to thank you for joining today. I hope that you will like the video so YouTube can push it out to more traders looking for live sessions or looking for futures scalping. Also, if you enjoyed the scalping or enjoyed my session, hopefully you're subscribed so you can get all the invites and for all the future sessions that I have. I'm going to try to do morning and afternoons, at least next week. That's my plan. Going further than that, I can't commit to that yet on doing both. But at least next week, I want to do both like I did this week. Yeah, so thanks for joining. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Hope you had a good week of trading. If not, hope you learned a lot. Losses are lessons. Remember that. And with that, it's now 4:50, or I'm sorry, 3:50. I'm going to close the feed and talk to you all next week. Thanks for being here.